Hello, everyone, and welcome to OHSCA Interviews. I'm Vincenzo Calla, and I'm your host for today's episode. Today, I'm happy to have with me the MPP for Renfrew Nipissing Pembroke, John Yakabuski. John was first elected in 2003 and has been re-elected 4 times since then. He was raised on politics as his father, Paul Yakabuski, served as the provincial member for the riding of Renfrew South for 24 years. Formerly a real estate sales representative, John is best known locally as the former owner and operator of Yakabuski's Home Hardware in Barry's Bay, which he operated for 20 years. John currently serves as the Parliamentary Assistant to the Premier. Thank you, John, for your time, and thank you so much for joining us today.
It is my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
We're glad to have you on, and we're going to start off our interview with the question and answer segment. And all of these questions come from the members of our high school team. So the first question is about your role as the Parliamentary Assistant to the Premier. So what role do you play as the Parliamentary Assistant to the Premier, and what do you do in that role?
Great question, Vincenzo. And it is a bit of a unique role because every other parliamentary assistant is responsible directly to a minister that has a portfolio, which they can act as their alternate, for example, in answering questions in the legislature or sometimes making appearances on their behalf. It's a little different with the PA to the Premier because everything that the Premier does is also supported by a minister who has a portfolio. So if the Premier is, if, for example, answering questions in the House and the Premier is not answering it, well, the Minister of Health may be answering it, or the Minister of Transportation, for example. So we don't get to do that very much because of the fact that there's always a minister that has that responsibility. I think it's fair to say that as a PA to the Premier, you tend to fill a much more what would be considered an advisory role, and somebody to bounce things off of from time to time, but also you act as a liaison between the Premier and members of the caucus. If they may feel that they need to raise something, and even though Premier Ford, he is known universally as being tremendously accessible, no one person has an unlimited amount of time. And as a result of that, you might have an opportunity to act as somewhat of a liaison between the Premier and members of caucus. But as far as a ministerial responsibility, you really don't have that same thing as a PA that's a PA to a specific minister, but you do get more access to the Premier.
Well, that's always an upside. That's always an upside, especially as a functioning member of a party in a functioning government. Obviously, that's always important. And I mean, we've had those chats about how accessible Premier Ford is on the show in the past. We've talked with so many people. Minister Khalid Rashid a couple weeks ago, we talked about well, that's the Ford family brand, really, and back to the late Rob Ford, and even, well, Premier Ford himself, always giving out their phone numbers and always access to the Premier and picking up the phone and calling him and helping. But like you said, there's only 24 hours in a day, and a lot of those there's busy days as Premier. So having that sort of liaison as that you play as is probably really helpful. So I want to move on to your role as an MPP. And actually, when I was setting this up, when I was talking with somebody from your team, we talked about we quickly mentioned about how you had been an MP for a while, and you've been an MP since 2003. So for the past 18 years or so. So I want to ask, what would you say has been the most pivotal moment for you in the past 18 years that you've been an MPP?
Well, that's also a great question, Vincenzo, and I think it's one that's maybe a little harder to pin down. But I will tell you that the most pivotal day of your life, other than when you get married or have children, is the day you get elected for the first time. And you can never replicate that. I've now had 5 elections, 5 times been elected, but there's nothing that can possibly ever match that first election. It is unbelievably unique. Now, there may be a pivotal day for someone on the other end of the spectrum when they lose their election. I've not had that experience, and I'm not looking forward to that. But that is something that I think people need to keep in mind, that is the life-changing event that is very few people ever get to serve in elected office as a provincial member of parliament, and even fewer get to serve in the executive council. So the reality is none of that happens if you don't get elected at home first. And that's hugely pivotal. Now, if I look at a couple of things in that 18-year history, I could talk to, there's things that happens, there's projects, the expansion of Highway 17, for example, that was a tremendous victory for us. And the latest approval of 22.5 kilometers is going to be, it'll be the single largest capital project ever in the history of Renfrew County from a provincial perspective. So it is huge. The expansion of long-term care homes, building new long-term care homes, just opened a redeveloped new home in Arnprior in the fall. So those are pivotal projects that our life, have changed the lives and improved the lives of so many people. But when I look back, the new arena going up in Renfrew, the second ice surface. But when I look back on 18 years, the things I will remember most actually are those little things, those little victories for, as my dad used to say, the little guy. You really make a difference when you rub shoulders with the little guy, the guy that he walks into your office and the biggest problem in his life is the one he's coming in to talk to you about. It may not be that difficult for you to solve sometimes it is, but solving that for that constituent, that's actually the most gratifying thing, because that's actually what we're there for. We represent, in my case, approximately 100,000 or so residents of Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke. They depend on me. I'm the only guy. Somebody was there before me, and somebody will be there after me. But right now, I'm the only guy that can take their concerns to the provincial legislature or the respective ministry that they're having an issue with. So that is so important. That is the thing that I will remember most when I leave this office at some point. And the people you meet along the way, that, quite frankly, Vincenzo, you will never experience that in any other role but a public life role like this. You have, no matter where you work, you have a group of people, whether it's at school as a student, or there's a group of people that you know and you get to know. In this job, you get to know so many more people, because by the very virtue of it, you are contacting and interacting with people all the time. That is, to me, the most significant role that I've played in 18 years. And when I'm long gone from this, that'll be the thing that I remember most, making a difference for, as my dad would say, the little guy.
Well, that was a great speech. It's so fantastic that we have members of parliament, members of provincial parliament, that still remember that. I mean, I know it's easy to get caught up, I'm sure, in Toronto life, in the life of the legislature, and get caught up, and especially in government, get caught up in all the other things that you do. But like you said, there are a certain amount of people, not a very big amount of people, that represent Ontario in the legislature, and being one of those 124 sitting there in Toronto to represent the people of Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke, or wherever other riding there is. It's just so important to be able to bring up those issues, like you said, even though they may be small to you, they may be the biggest issue in someone's life, and just being able to solve those and being able to represent them is just so fantastic and just so important as an elected official on any level. And I think,
well, Vincenzo, since 1867, for anybody who's been to Queen's Park, every person who has ever served as a member of the legislature, their name is engraved in marble for each parliament. And the reality is, in all those years, 155 years, there's not that many. So it's a little humbling to understand and see just how few people have had the honor of serving and what it really means to them.
Definitely. And I mean, I know that for a lot of people, politics sort of passes them by and only really comes up when they need when they need it to, and then other than that, they put it away. But especially here, it's just such an important thing. And like you said, being able to serve them and those few people that have represented, it's been, I'm sure, the honor of a lifetime for every single person through those doors in Queen's Park. So we're gonna move on to a little bit of policy now. Um, this one comes from Vasu and Ajax, and this has a sort of a not a story to it, but some context to it. So a few years ago, under Ontario's Climate Change Action Plan, buyers of most new electric vehicles were receiving a full $14,000 rebate instead of just $3,000, which had a drastic increase in sales. But now it has gone down by almost half. Gas prices, as everybody knows, are seeking new highs and that we've never seen before, and they're impacting the cost of living for many Ontario citizens. Will your government increase the electric vehicle rebate in the coming months, or do you have plans in the election, if re-elected, to encourage more Ontarians to help the environment and find solutions to the current gas price crisis through this?
And what was it, Vasha?
Vasu from Ajax.
Vasu, thank you for the question, Vasu. And first of all, I can't answer the question as to what will be in the election platform, because then I'd have to be removed permanently. But I do want to go back to the history of this a little bit. When the Liberals brought in this rebate program, $14,000, quite frankly, it was a rebate for the rich. I mean, the market was dominated by expensive, exclusive electric vehicles. We are now embarking on we're into a whole new world when it comes to electric vehicles and electric vehicle production. So what we saw when we came into office is that, look, at people that could afford a Tesla didn't need the $14,000 rebate, quite frankly. So we were actually taking money out of the pockets of middle income families that could be spent on the important things that matter to them. So what we're doing now, and we are going to be a world leader, is recently, of course, you just saw the announcement by our government, the federal government, LG, and Stellantis about building the biggest single automotive plant ever in our history for electric, the EV battery production. This is such a game changer. So all of these vehicles that are going to be more and more popular, which will, by virtue of economics, bring down the cost of those vehicles, because the production costs will go down because we'll be producing more of them from every manufacturer. If you look at the commitments made by Ford, General Motors to build a Honda, just a big announcement in Honda there a couple of weeks ago. We are talking about Ontario's automotive impact going to be solidified for the next half century. We are talking about, the jobs of the future arriving here today. So we're changing completely the electric vehicle market. We're going to be the ones building those vehicles. We're going to be the one producing and manufacturing the batteries for those vehicles. We're going to make those cars more and more affordable. So as the demand naturally increases, it's going to be the average person is going to have more access to that marketplace, not where they were, the Liberals were trying to artificially inflate the market by putting money into somebody's pocket that wasn't necessary. We're going to make sure, and that's why we've done some things with the removal of the license fees, so that middle-class families that are driving vehicles today are going to get somewhat of a break. But I'm telling you, the future is absolutely, it's not just bright, it's gleaming bright in the automotive industry here in Ontario, because of the things that we've done as a government to attract those, and they can go anywhere, as you know. They have the economics and the economic power and the clout to set up those manufacturing facilities wherever they choose. And they're choosing Ontario because we've changed our energy policy, our taxation policy, WSIB policies, so many of the things that are part and parcel of attracting business to your jurisdiction. We have accomplished, even being, somewhat put on the sidelines because of COVID, we've still managed to accomplish all of these things, so that in 4 short years, we're going from an industry in Ontario that was, some would say, was ready to receive the last rites, to one that is having a rebirth. So when you look at it from that perspective, Vincenzo, the future of vehicles, electric vehicles, access to electric vehicles for everybody, including the middle class, I don't think it's ever been brighter. And we're going to make sure that Ontario continues to lead in that area.
Well, that's fantastic, because I know that now, like as Vasu mentioned, and we don't even need Vasu to mention it, because everywhere we turn, we're seeing it. The gas prices are so high, and people want to look to an electric vehicle future. And it's just, it couldn't be at a better time now to start bringing those markets into Ontario, bringing those electric vehicle manufacturing plants into Ontario. And I know that so many people on this show have come on, so many of your colleagues have come on and talked about how Ontario is going to be the economic engine of North America. And this is just one of those reasons. And like, it's so amazing that we're getting those prices down by doing it homegrown, instead of just, like you said, instead of the Liberals
well, we also
putting it-
have, if I
Yeah.
may, we also have access to
Mhm.
the critical minerals that are so necessary and prerequisite to be able to build these batteries. We have that on our land. The mining sector in Ontario is forecast to grow dramatically as a result of that, because we have access to those critical minerals, which is also important, because on the other side of the Arctic, they also have critical minerals. And do we want to be building cars that have EV batteries that have Canadian components in them, or do we want to have cars being built with Russian components in them, given what Putin is doing in the world today? This is a great time for Ontario, and a great time for Canada, with us being able to sign these contracts, bring these companies here. I'm telling you, it's hard not to get excited.
Well, yeah, it's so true. And like you said, the future's gleaming, and being able, and all the jobs it'll bring too. I mean, we could go on about this forever, but all the jobs it's going to bring to everyday Ontarians too.
Good jobs, good paying
jobs that are going
jobs
to
you want to be able
benefit.
to raise your family on.
Exactly. And there's just so much about this that are going to bring it on. And like you said, it's going to be for everybody. It's not just for a few elite people that already have the money, like you said. So I would love to keep talking about this, but we're going to move on to the next question. And this is an election question, given we're in an election year, a couple months away from an election. So I wanted to ask, how do you think, and this is a question I know we're really dealing with now, how do you think the Ontario PC party can convince 2018 Liberal and NDP voters to vote PC in June?
Well, we'll be doing nothing to convince Liberal and NDP voters to vote PC, because they're untouchable. They are locked in. If you're talking about people that would only vote that are
people that vote in
as
2018,
liberal,
Mhm.
okay. But
Yeah.
if people that, for example, the Liberals got roughly just under 20% of the vote, that's as low as they can ever go. We're not even interested or worried about that 20% of the electorate. That's just my son calling. I'll call him back later. We're interested in the ones that are switchers. We have our base. The Liberals' base has been exposed at about 20%. I don't think the Liberals could ever go lower than they did in 2018. The NDP have a base, and we have a base, but you can't form government on those bases. So we are going after that voter that is movable, that voter that is flexible, that is they sometimes are termed as switchers. versus the old saying years ago, before they had in Canada, they said, they could say in Quebec, a pig painted red would get elected as a Liberal. Down in the States, they used to call them yellow dog Democrats. Even a yellow dog would get elected as a Democrat down there in some of those areas. That's what they used to say. But we have to focus on the ones that are accessible. Don't spend your time trying to win the vote of one that you'll never get. An old friend of mine used to say, he says, the only person you can truly believe is the one who says, I'm not voting for you. And those people that form the basis of other parties, they're not voting for us. But there are so many things that we have done already, and that's, the campaign has already started. Let's face it. You lay some of these, what we've done in the automotive sector. Do you think that isn't changing the votes of so many of these people that are employed by Unifor, or one way or another are impacted by the automotive industry? They're looking at us and saying, hey, wait a minute, this Conservative Party understands what we need. What about the skilled trades that, we've made so many changes to attract people into the skilled trades? My son that was just calling me, he's a Red Seal carpenter. And I can tell you that he's last year, he's well into the six figures in his salary. I can't divulge all his information, but he makes tremendous money because he works hard, loves his job. So Minister McNaughton, through our government, has made a number of changes to the skilled trades. There's another thing. What have we done for long-term care? We're transforming long-term care, historical transformation, long-term care, 30,000 new beds, 28,000 redeveloped beds. These are the things that people are going, when the Liberals built 611 beds between 2011 and 2018, 611 net new beds. So what we've done, and we've really, and even though, as I say, we were sidelined somewhat with COVID, because that had to be the focus. COVID comes along. It's sort of like, well, I'd like to remodel the bathroom, but right now the house is on fire. I think we got to put the fire out first. And that's what was happening for 2 years. So now we can see that COVID is something that we're going to live with in the various iterations, but declining in its veracity, we believe. So we can focus now on making those changes and taking those changes to the people, the promise of those changes, but we've already laid out the groundwork. And now we just have to make sure people understand what these things that we're doing and have already begun to do, what it means for them as Ontarians, and what it means in their lives. So I know that I'm pretty comfortable that those switching are available, those voters that are available to be switched are going to be taking a really favorable look at Doug Ford and the PCs throughout May and of course on June the 2nd, because you know what? It does represent what they want to see in Ontario. And that's a future that is bright for them, their children, their grandchildren, and anyone else that we can attract to this country as well, because we need to bring the people that can fill these jobs, because this economy is going to roll. Because we've done the things that attract the people, improving the tax structure and the stuff on the non-revenue side for businesses they want to establish here. And I think that that's going to be the biggest thing that will attract that switching voter to the PCs.
Definitely. And even you mentioned how in COVID, we had to sort of take a sideline to some of the things that the government wanted to do that were elected on 2018. Even at that, you still worked at it. Like when we had Will Bama on, we talked about how the economy, how we were lowering the deficit, and that sort of had to take sort of a pause during COVID. And even at that, the deficit is lower than it was when the Liberals left it in 2018 with COVID. So it's just
pretty
so
amazing
fantastic.
fiscal management, pretty amazing fiscal management.
Definitely. And we're going to go on to the very last part, which is advice for the next generation. We ask this to everybody on our show. So we wanted to ask you very quickly, what should young high school Conservatives do in order to get more politically active? One piece of advice you would give them.
One piece of advice to get more politically active. Well,
Mm-hmm.
get involved in the issues themselves. Don't sit on the sidelines watching the world pass by. Dig into them, but dig into them with an open mind so that you form your views as to what where you stand. Don't watch the messengers of social media or this or that try to tell you what you should be thinking about the issues of the day. The next generation, your generation, the generation of my grandkids, really is what it is, and to somewhat our children. But they're the leaders of tomorrow, and we need them to be objective thinkers, but also to be willing to question what's being pushed towards them. And quite frankly, we have an education system that does not push people towards conservative thinking. It is very much opposed to conservative thinking. And I think that we need our young people to actually open up their minds and ask themselves if the thing that they're being some of it being shoved at them today really is the best way to build a strong, competent, compassionate society. Conservatives get mischaracterized as not being compassionate. Nothing could be further from the truth. Nothing could be further from the truth. Having grown up in a family of 14 children, I know exactly what it's about. And conservatives are the most compassionate people out there, but they also have a realistic view toward what is necessary to make our society the best it can be going forward. So get involved, be critical, and arrive at your own conclusions.
Great advice that we're going to end on. And it's just a great tone to end on, especially now that we are in the election pretty much. I mean, we may as well be. We're starting to get into it. And like you said, we're getting into it, and just get involved in any way you can. And don't sit on the sidelines, get out on the forefront and fight for what you think is right. So thank you, John, for your time today. We really appreciate you being with us. We wish you on the future. And that is it. We hope you enjoyed today's interview. Look for more videos coming soon. We have a really big interview coming out next week. We hope you'll enjoy it and tune in next week. Make sure to follow our Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok accounts at Ontario HS Cons for info about our next interview and for more great content. Check our website, ontariohsconservatives.org, to learn more about us, see our projects for more great content. For our YouTube viewers, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and click the notification bell so you don't miss a video. Podcast listeners, follow us and stay updated with new episodes. We hope to see you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you.